Now on the Georgia vote.
This is my time, Postmaster General. You're here under oath before the U.S. Senate.
Tense moments once again between Senator Jon Ossoff and Postmaster General Louis DeJoy. Find out where on-time delivery is for the U.S. Postal Service and when improvements at Georgia's Palmetto facility could be made. Plus,
this is the highest stakes trial I've been involved in.
Attorney Doug Weinstein, fresh off securing an acquittal of his client Yak Gotti in the YSL trial. He'll share his thoughts after Georgia's longest criminal trial finally reaches its end. And this morning, former executive director of the Georgia House Democratic Caucus, Val Sabat, and GOP strategist Jay Williams sit down for our Politics Roundtable. All right now on the Georgia Vote.
From the 11 Alive studios, this is the Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Welcome into the Georgia Vote. Faith Jesse is off today. 6 weeks from tomorrow, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. As you just saw on Meet the Press, President-elect Trump sat for his first network interview since the election with NBC's Kristen Welker. He continues to build his second administration, and it will likely include at least 3 members of Georgia's Republican Party. Late Thursday, the president-elect said he wants former Senator David Perdue to serve as the next U.S. ambassador to China. In a statement, Trump said Perdue will help maintain peace in the region and a productive working relationship with China's leaders. The president-elect says he'll nominate former Senator Kelly Loeffler to lead the Small Business Administration. The SBA is a cabinet-level agency that provides loans and counseling to the nation's small businesses. In a statement, President-elect Trump said, in part, small businesses are the backbone of our great economy. Kelly will bring her experience in business and Washington to reduce red tape and unleash opportunity for small businesses to grow, innovate, and thrive. Perdue and Loeffler join former Congressman Doug Collins as potential members of a Trump administration. The president-elect previously nominated Collins as Secretary of the Veterans Affairs Department. All 3 nominees, Perdue, Loeffler, and Collins, will need Senate confirmation. And voters in several metro Atlanta counties were at the polls Tuesday for a runoff election. Ishay Collins won a seat on the Atlanta City Council with 60% of the vote. In DeKalb County, voters also decided 2 seats on their county commission. Ladina Bolton defeated Jacqueline Adams in District 7. This area covers the cities of Stone Mountain and Doraville. And for Commission District 3, Nicole Messiah defeated Andrew Bell. District 3 covers the southeast part of the county, which includes Gresham Park and Panthersville. And in the newly created city of Mulberry in Gwinnett County, Doug Ingram claims a council seat with a runoff win over Michelle Sims. And as polls were closing Tuesday night, Mulberry held its first ever regular city council meeting. During the meeting, newly elected city council member Michael Coker was appointed the interim mayor of Mulberry. Council members also appointed an interim mayor pro tem and hired an attorney to represent the city as it faces a lawsuit over its legitimacy. And on Capitol Hill this week, senators had another chance to question Postmaster General Louis DeJoy following reports of continuing underperformance inside the U.S. Postal Service. It has been a particular problem here in Georgia, where the on-time USPS mail delivery rate sits at just 75%, according to the agency. That's an improvement from earlier this year, but it is still almost 20% below the agency's target. Senator Jon Ossoff, a Democrat, confronted DeJoy over the delays at a hearing in Washington.
You lowered your targets for next year so you could meet your targets.
So I can make the changes that we need to make to provide a viable United States Postal Service.
Well, Postmaster General, you're not meeting your financial targets. You're hemorrhaging cash when you said you'd be making money. Delivery in Georgia has been abysmal this year. You have not recovered as you said you would. You need to do better for my constituents in Georgia.
The USPS recently touted its service during the November general election, reporting nearly 100% of completed mail ballots were returned to election offices within a week. But if you are still experiencing postal problems tied to the facility in Palmetto, we want to hear from you. Just send us an email to the address on your screen. That's postalproblems@11alive.com. And the post office in Plains could have a new name. Senators Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff introduced a bill to name the building for former President Jimmy Carter and late First Lady Rosalind Carter. The post office is on Main Street in Plains. A similar bill passed the U.S. House on Thursday. The Fulton County District Attorney's Office is moving on after failing to get convictions on most of the charges in the YSL case. DA Fani Willis, who just won re-election a month ago, is keeping quiet about how that case turned out. Her office still has a big backlog of criminal cases it's trying to manage. The question now, does YSL and the ongoing cases surrounding President-elect Trump affect whatever cases are next for the Fulton DA? 11 Alive's Doug Richards examines how these acquittals could impact the DA's office moving forward.
This isn't the first DA's office that's lost a high-profile case. It happens, but it's the way that you lose.
Former DeKalb District Attorney Robert James says this week's YSL verdict may have a lasting sting for the Fulton County DA's office.
The criticism and the scolding by the judge for withholding vital information, that's not good, right?
Fulton prosecutors did get a guilty plea from YSL's highest profile defendant, the rapper known as Young Thug. And last month, DA Fani Willis easily won re-election.
Where are you, Ms. Willis?
In April, Willis didn't show up to debate a Democratic primary challenger at the Atlanta Press Club. Christian Y. Smith, a former prosecutor, was mildly critical of her case against YSL.
Do you think RICO is overused, as we often hear from some defense attorneys?
Absolutely.
Yet Willis prevailed easily in the primary against Y. Smith and the November election. Each week, hundreds of Fulton County residents report to the courthouse to serve on grand juries and as courtroom jurors. Many are now familiar with Willis's high-profile prosecutions of YSL and the DA's ongoing election interference case against former President Donald Trump, including Willis's personal relationship with a well-paid contractor who had handled the Trump case.
During voir dire or questioning of the jurors, if they don't bring up all of this stuff.
James thinks at least some of those potential jurors will have those cases in the back of their minds when prosecutors are trying to get them to serve on future jury panels.
And the fact that it's difficult for them to be fair to the state.
Doug Richards, 11 Alive News.
The district attorney has not directly responded. Officials in her office tell 11 Alive News that they will plan to stay aggressive prosecuting gang cases, RICO cases, and not be daunted by any setbacks coming out of the YSL or the Trump cases. Next, we dig more into the aftermath of the YSL trial. He calls it bizarre and crazy. Now, attorney Doug Weinstein shares his thoughts after the months-long trial finally ends with an acquittal for his client. And later, the highs and lows of the nation's economy are leaving a large impact on a precious metals retailer in metro Atlanta. We'll hear from its owners in this week's Voice of the Voter. The YSL trial, the longest in state history, came to a close this week after more than a year of headlines and controversy. Veteran patent lawyer turned rookie criminal defense attorney Doug Weinstein had a front row seat to the history-making trial, representing Diamante Kendrick, also known as Yak Gotti, who faced a list of charges including murder and racketeering, but was acquitted on all counts. In this week's Sunday Conversation, Weinstein takes us inside the case. How many criminal trials have you been a defense attorney?
Including this one.
Including this one?
One.
This was your first criminal trial?
This was being thrown into the deep end. Yes, my first criminal trial.
Now that your involvement with this case has come to a close, and you look back on it now, how does it compare in reality to what you expected it would be going into it?
This case is unlike any normal civil or criminal case. The amount of bizarre and crazy things that happened over the course of this case, the length of the case, 10 months of jury selection, a judge who's recused and replaced mid-trial by another judge. I mean, there are so many things that happen. The side characters in the case, the witnesses. Nothing in this case went as expected.
This is known as Georgia's longest-lasting criminal trial. Jury selection started in January of 2023. The final verdicts for your client came just earlier this week.
Yes.
That's a 2-year span.
It is. And it's a remarkable length for a case.
What's the impact on the system of a case that lasts this long?
When we're in trial for 2 years, Diamante is not our only client. We have other clients. Now, fortunately, a lot of them, if not most, are out on bond. But there's scores of our clients that are sitting in jail waiting for trial, and they can't get their trial because their attorney is in trial. We can only do one trial at a time. That's just our clients. Replicate this over and over by the number of defense attorneys involved in the case. Look at the judicial resources dedicated to this case. Look at the resources of the DA's office dedicated to this case. Look at the resources of the Fulton County Sheriff's Office and Cobb County involved in this case. And it was a huge diversion of resources that could have been put to other uses.
You think the YSL case slowed the pace of justice in Metro Atlanta?
Well, I don't just think that. I know that. The YSL case bogged down courts throughout Metro Atlanta, all the surrounding counties, and even courts as far away as Cairo, Augusta. All of them were suffering the effects of attorneys that have cases in those courts being tied up here in YSL.
Who's responsible for that?
Ultimately, it is the responsibility of the judge that managed this case, as well as the DA's office.
I'd imagine there are some, including perhaps folks who are more prosecutorially aligned, who would say, look, we allege that a crime was committed, and you've got to do whatever it takes, no matter how long it takes, to bring that case to its conclusion. What do you say to that?
I would absolutely agree that that's the case, but you can do it in an efficient manner, and you can do it in a manner that perhaps could yield better results for the prosecutor. I don't think it was in the prosecution's interest to drag this case out over a year.
What do you think the legacy of this case will be?
That's a very difficult question because I'm torn between cynicism and hope. My hope would be that the state has learned, at least listening to what some of these jurors have said, that the use of artists, and we haven't talked about this, but the use of artists and rappers' artistic expression against them is not only is it wrong, not only does it infringe upon their First Amendment rights, but it will not yield success in a lot of cases. And it didn't yield success in this case. So maybe they'll think twice before using lyrics against them. Maybe in future cases, they will be more considerate of the time of the citizens who get put on jury duty. Maybe they will understand that the resources of our justice system, including the DA's office and the sheriff's office and the judiciary, can be put to better uses than these massive racketeering charges.
You said you're torn between a more optimistic and a more cynical answer to that question. You gave the optimistic version.
Yeah.
What's the cynical one that you're wrestling with?
Nothing changes.
11 Alive News reached out to District Attorney Fonnie Willis and Judge Ural Glanville. Neither responded to a request for comment. And you can watch much more of our conversation right now on our streaming app, 11 Alive Plus. Look for it on Roku, Apple TV, or wherever you get your streams. And still ahead, we hear from the voice of the voter. But first, Fal Sabak and Jay Williams join us to talk about the week that was in our Politics Roundtable. Stay with us. Welcome back into the Georgia Vote. It is time now for our Political Roundtable. Today, we have Republican strategist Jay Williams, founder and managing principal of the Stone Ridge Group, whose clients have included former Georgia Governor Nathan Deal and the Republican Party of Georgia, and Fal Sabak, assistant vice president at McGuire Woods Consulting and a former executive director of the Georgia House Democratic Caucus. Fal, Jay, welcome to you both. Welcome back to the show to you both. Let's start here, and I want to start with you, Jay.
Yeah.
Former president, now President-elect Donald Trump is in the process of announcing folks he is tapping for major positions in his incoming administration. We're seeing a lot of Georgia names in this conversation right now. What role will Georgia play in this new administration?
I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of folks from Georgia. I think he likes a lot of the folks in Georgia that have been involved, whether it's his campaign or previous administration. I mean, you've got Loeffler, Doug Collins, and David Perdue. You also have other people like Senator Brandon Beach or other folks that, Burt Jones, that Bert's going to run for governor, but you have other folks that the president likes and is going to probably include in his team.
Is this partly a function of Georgia being such a critical battleground state where there is more potential face time between President-elect Trump and these Georgians, these prominent Georgians?
I think that's a big part of it. Obviously, the president got to know his allies during the whole thing in 2020, and so I think that he remembers that and appreciates that and is going to reward his folks for that.
Phil, we're talking to Jay about the Republican side of things, but Georgia has a prominent Democratic coalition in the United States Congress and in the Senate in particular. Both of Georgia's senators, John Ossoff or Raphael Warnock, the Reverend, both Democrats. What role will they play?
I mean, I believe that they're going to still push the Democratic agenda in the Senate. And I think especially Senator Ossoff, he really has to turn his attention now to 2026. So I think that they're going to work together with the administration to continue delivering for Georgians. 2026
feels like it is a long way away, but it also feels like it's coming up pretty quickly. We already have one candidate here in Georgia, Attorney General Chris Carr, who has announced his intention to run for the governorship here in Georgia. More candidates are expected to follow. Jay, what do you expect to see? What should we be looking for as we head into what feels like another election year coming down the line?
I mean, it's going to be a tsunami. I mean, once one of these Congress people either leaves office or retires or decides to, run for Senate or something like that, you're going to see a lot of other folks fall in and have a domino kind of situation where you've got everybody running and all kinds of seats open. This happens every time, every 3 cycles or so, where you've got a lot of folks resigning and changing jobs and trying to get a new job. So I think it's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of surprises. There are a lot of people that we didn't expect. There's going to be a lot of things that happen. You have to remember, in that election in 2026, the president will be in office for 2 years. So what's the economy look like and some other things? And that's going to have an impact on who wins in 26.
And we can talk about the brass tacks of politics here. We do that a lot on this show. But I think if you're a casual observer of politics and you're watching this, you got to be throwing your hands up in the air and saying, oh my goodness, we just got done with a big election. How are we talking about this already? How have things gotten so far early in the calendar, Val?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the mechanisms of the campaign, right? They're becoming more expensive. They're becoming more challenging. You need more time to kind of break through the noise, to talk to voters, reach out to them, make sure they know who you are, what your issues are. I think that's why we're seeing them start earlier and earlier. And like you said, Attorney General Chris Carr is already in the race. I bet a lot more folks are going to jump in after the legislative session.
And that's a good pivot point, because we want to talk about something in a little bit more of the immediate future here in Georgia, and that's the start of the next legislative session here. It begins in January. Jay, what do you expect to be the hot topics under the Gold Dome this year?
I mean, I think you got the governor has kind of been hitting around about tort reform. I think that could possibly pop up. I mean, typically they don't take on really super controversial issues, but I think that the governor has an agenda. He's got a path of things that he wants to do in the future, and he may try to raise his profile in the last session. He's really going to have a lot of influence. He probably won't have a lot of influence in the 26 session. So I think he might do tort reform or some other big things. They're also going to have to decide what they're going to do with the $16 billion budget surplus. Are they going to give that money back? Are they going to spend some money on some things? So those will be two big things I think they talk about.
Republicans control the governor's mansion, they control the state Senate, and they control the state House. Fal, we've got about 20 seconds left. You were involved in the Georgia Democrats. You're still involved with the Georgia Democrats. What do you do as a minority party in that position?
Well, I mean, I think what you do is the good thing about the Democrats now, you have 2 new leaders in both chambers. You kind of have an opportunity to kind of bring new ideas to push issues that the Georgians care about, right? And you have an opportunity to work with Republicans on what legislation needs to be pushed. I think that we'll see something in terms of school safety after the Appalachia shooting. And I think that's something where both parties are going to have to come together to find common sense legislation.
We would love to continue the conversation. Unfortunately, we have got to go to break. We'll have you both back on again, we are sure. Right now, stay with us. The Voice of the Voter is next. Well, we are making sure that real Georgians remain at the center of the political conversation. After all, you can't have the Georgia vote without Georgia voters. This morning, Faith Jesse takes us to Chamblee in DeKalb County to meet a husband and wife business team as they maneuver through a changing political landscape.
Precious metals are the best conductors on the planet. Typically never gets old. When you don't hear the sizzling, that means it's safe to touch.
So originally, I'm from New York. I was born there. I came to Georgia in '98 for high school.
I was born in New York too, but I left when I was 8. Carrying on the family legacy is an honor. I spend a lot of time with my clients in here because everything is custom, I've got to get into your head.
Okay.
So
this is like a more like intimate setting.
I do the fine jewelry part. Andre does coins and bullion specifically, where clients are either liquidating their metals position or adding to their metals position. The round brilliant is the staple. So that's the equivalent of a 2 carat.
Wow. That is so pretty.
The way people react and being passionate, just like their sports team, people are being passionate about their, political affiliation, and that's different than what I've seen before.
It is a little scary sometimes when you see what you see in the media, and you never know what you're going to get. So I feel sometimes you have to tiptoe until you understand what you're dealing with in any given situation. I think the U.S. is the cat that's got 9 lives. It could all go to 0, and somehow it will rebound. 2008 is the basic example of this. Everything fell apart. Here we are in 2024, and you're looking at the stock market do things it's never done. You're looking at where Bitcoin went. You're looking at gold at $2,600 an ounce.
We're self-employed. It's a matter of life or death survival for us. So death is not an option from a business perspective. We have to figure it out. Politically, I chose morals, and the country chose money, and one way or another, it may or may not affect me.
I don't know if I'm optimistic yet. I think I need to see what actually happens, because it's one thing to say I'm going to do this, this, and this. It's another thing when it actually happens and what the reaction is, because the economy is going to move the way people react to what is going on and what's happening. And as prices move, it's going to tell a story.
And remember, you can always catch the Georgia Vote on the 11 Alive Plus streaming app. It is free to download on your Roku, Amazon Fire, or Apple TV. Thank you for watching us today. We hope to see you here again next Sunday morning at 11 for another edition of the Georgia Vote. We'll see you then.